Hi everyone, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Hakuna Matata, Wingardium Leviosa, whichever you prefer, I'm inclusive. Tonight I have something different for you. This video is set in two parts. The first is something I'd like to share with you, my thoughts on one of the most memorable Christmas tales ever told, followed by how, in my opinion, it should have gone. And then a Christmas Eve horror story, written by me. But first, get comfy and come with me on a journey to Christmas past, present, and future. We all know the story of Ebenezer Scrooge's magical Christmas redemption. It's a tale baked into the very fabric of the holiday season. A comforting story of a man so cold his own breath freezes on his lips, who, thanks to three ghosts, learns to be kind and is reborn as a symbol of Christmas cheer. It's a story of hope and second chances. But what if that's not the story that should have been told? What if, after a lifetime of calculated cruelty, of systemic abuse and deliberate harm, a man like Scrooge didn't deserve a second chance? What if the whole idea of redemption is a profound, almost offensive injustice to the countless lives he shattered? Forget the ghosts of Christmas as gentle if scary guides. On this Christmas Eve, we're going to explore a different possibility, a darker, maybe more fitting timeline, one where three spectral judges arrive, and they're not here to redeem him. They aren't here to show him the error of his ways so he can change. They're here to deliver a sentence of pure psychological terror, meticulously designed to fit the exact shape of his crimes. This isn't the story of a man finding his soul. This is the story of a man being systematically unmade by the very sins he spent a lifetime perfecting. This is what Scrooge really deserved. The case for retribution. Before we start this dark reimagining, we have to establish why we're even doing it. Why does the original story, for all its charm, feel so unsatisfying to a modern eye? The problem is how easily Scrooge gets off the hook. His sins aren't minor. Dickens calls him a squeezing, wrenching, grasping, scraping, clutching, covetous old sinner. This is a man who, when asked about the poor, sneers they should die to decrease the surplus population. He keeps his clerk, Bob Cratchit, in a dismal little cell, a sort of tank, grumbling about every lump of coal Bob puts on the fire. His cruelty isn't just a bad mood, it's an active, philosophical stance. He's an architect of misery. Some modern readings have tried to frame Scrooge psychologically, seeing him as a controlling perfectionist, and even speculating that he might have a condition like obsessive-compulsive personality disorder. His obsession with money is a shield against the trauma of his past, a past where he was neglected by his father and left to feel unwanted and alone. This trauma, however, doesn't excuse the empire of pain he builds on it. It just provides the blueprint. Over a lifetime, his fear curdled into a master passion for gain, pushing out everything else, including his ability to love. Recent adaptations, like the 2019 BBC/FX miniseries, have already leaned into this darker idea, presenting a Scrooge whose cruelty is far more malicious and whose past contains deeper, more disturbing traumas, like hints of abuse, that fuel his later actions. These retellings get that a man this steeped in calculated malice isn't just a grumpy miser, he's a predator. In our story, his business is the Victorian version of a payday loan shop, profiting from desperation and foreclosing on people's futures. His actions create a ripple effect of suffering. So, a single night of ghost stories, no matter how scary, followed by buying a big turkey feels flimsy. It's a personal win for him, but what about the decades of pain he inflicted on others? Where's the justice for Belle, the fiancée he emotionally abandoned? Where's the justice for Bob Cratchit, who lived in constant fear? What about the dozens, maybe hundreds, of unnamed families ruined by his business? Redemption is a private deal between a man and his conscience. Retribution is a public balancing of the scales. Our premise is that Scrooge's crimes are so huge, so deeply woven into other people's lives, that a simple change of heart isn't enough. The only fitting consequence is a sentence that mirrors his sins, a sustained, inescapable, and deeply personal psychological torment. Let the trial begin. The court is now in session, and the first judge is about to be called, a judge from a place he can no longer escape, his own past. The judge of the past, the architect of trauma. The clock strikes 1. But the spirit that appears isn't the gentle, flickering creature from Dickens's book. There's no soft light, no kind gaze. The being that takes shape in the freezing air of Scrooge's bedroom is a monstrous fusion of memory itself. It's made from shards of broken promises and the cold, hard glint of every coin he ever valued more than a person. This isn't the ghost of Christmas past. This is the judge of the past. And its goal isn't to make him feel sad, but to force him to relive the pain he caused. The traditional journey starts with his lonely boyhood at school. The ghost shows him a sad boy left behind for the holidays, and Scrooge cries for his younger self. But our judge has no time for Scrooge's self-pity. The scene shifts, but he's not just watching. He is the boy. But this time, the judge layers the experience with the consequences of that loneliness. He feels the gnawing solitude not as a sad memory, but as the very seed of the coldness that would let him isolate Bob Cratchit in his dismal little cell. The judge whispers, its voice a chorus of his future victims. This feeling, this chilling isolation you're crying about, this is what you would one day perfect. You learn to weaponize loneliness. You monetize despair. He feels the boy's tears freeze on his cheeks, and they feel like the ice he would later grow in his own heart. The memory is no longer a source of sympathy. It's an indictment. It's the origin story of a monster. And that brings us to Fezziwig's party. In the original, this is a moment of pure joy. Fezziwig is the model of a kind boss, a man who knew he has the power to render us happy or unhappy. The memory is meant to make Scrooge regret how he treats Bob Cratchit. The judge of the past, however, reframes this memory completely. Scrooge is there, a young apprentice, but he isn't swept up in the joy. The judge forces him to see the scene through the eyes of his future self, the squeezing, wrenching, grasping sinner he would become. He sees Fezziwig's generosity not as a virtue, but as a colossal waste. He feels a phantom ledger appear in his hands, his fingers twitching, involuntarily calculating the cost of the food, the music, the lost work hours. The joyful shouts of, "Yo-ho, my boys!" are twisted into the noise of inefficiency. "Look closely," the judge hisses, its form shifting to show the face of the man who would one day claim Christmas is just a time for paying bills without money. He's teaching you how to build loyalty through joy. A valuable lesson. But you learned a different lesson, didn't you? You learned that all this warmth was just an asset, one that could be stripped, liquidated, and turned into cold, hard cash. Scrooge is forced to watch Fezziwig dance and feel nothing but contempt for the waste. He sees his younger self smiling, and the judge makes him feel that smile curdle inside. The moment the apprentice realized his master was a fool, and that a fortune could be made by doing the exact opposite. This memory isn't about lost joy anymore. It's about the moment he chose the path of a predator. But the judge saves its true masterpiece for Belle. This is the moment of Scrooge's fall. where his fiancée breaks their engagement because his master passion, gain, has replaced her. In the book, Scrooge is tormented by this memory, begging the spirit to show him no more. Our judge has a different method. It doesn't let him be a pained observer. It forces him into the scene, into his younger body, standing before Belle. But he is the sum of all his future sins, inhabiting his past self. He hears her words, "Another idol has displaced me, a golden one." And the judge strips away any remorse. Instead, Scrooge is forced to feel a cold, clear logic. He feels the words forming in his mind, not of love, but of a cost-benefit analysis. "She speaks of a contract," the judge whispers, its voice now mimicking Belle's, but twisted with sarcasm. "An old one, made when you were poor. It is no longer profitable. Her value has depreciated. Your nobler aspirations, liabilities, she is a risk to your portfolio." He tries to cry out that it wasn't like that, but the judge has complete control. He's made to look at Belle's face, her eyes filled with tears, and to feel with sickening clarity that her leaving was the right call. It wasn't a tragedy. It was a necessary business decision. Love was an unprofitable dream. He feels the relief of a liability being removed. The judge makes him experience the breakup, not as the loss of his one true love, but as the single most profitable transaction of his young life. As the vision of Belle fades, the judge delivers its closing argument. It doesn't show him her happy future family to make him regretful. Instead, it shows him a montage of his own actions that came directly from that choice. Every foreclosure, every ruined family, every desperate person to whom he showed no mercy, they all flash before him. "This," the judge's voice booms, "is the legacy of your choice. You didn't just lose her. You traded her for this. You built your fortune on the grave of your own heart." Scrooge is thrown back into his bed, not sobbing with regret, but shaking with a new kind of horror. He hasn't just been shown his past. He has been made to understand his cruelty wasn't a slow decay. It was a series of conscious choices. He wasn't a victim. He was the architect of his own damnation, and the judge of the past just forced him to review the blueprints, brick by bloody brick. The clock is already ticking. 2 more judges await. The judge of the present, the mirror of cruelty. As the echo of the first judge's verdict fades, the room is plunged into a heavy silence, broken only by Scrooge's ragged breathing. There's no jolly giant, no mountain of festive food. The second spirit appears not as a figure, but as an absence. The shadows in the corner of the room deepen, pull together, and take on a form that's both there and not. A shimmering distortion in the air, like heat rising from blacktop. Its voice isn't a single sound, but a mess of whispers and whimpers, the background noise of all the suffering he is causing at this exact moment. This is the judge of the present, and its courtroom is the city of London itself. Its purpose isn't to teach empathy by showing him heartwarming scenes. It's to immerse him in the direct, real-time consequences of his actions. There's no gentle lesson here, only a raw, unblinking mirror. The first stop is, of course, the Cratchit house. The original spirit shows a family that is poor but rich in love. Their toast to the ogre of the family, Mr. Scrooge, is a moment of pity. But the judge of the present has no time for that. Scrooge finds himself standing unseen in the Cratchits' small, cold home. But the scene is stripped of its charm. The judge turns up the misery. He doesn't just see a small pudding. He smells the faint, cloying scent of hunger in the air. He sees Mrs. Cratchit's smile not as brave, but as a brittle facade, her jaw tight with the effort of holding back fear and fury. The judge forces Scrooge to listen to the unspoken anxieties beneath their chatter. When Bob toasts the founder of the feast, the judge's whispers translate his words into the groveling terror of a man utterly dependent on a tyrant. I must praise him, the whispers explain, because our lives hang by the thread of his whim. My son's life depends on the pittance he allows me. And then there's Tiny Tim. The judge doesn't present him as a pitiable, saintly child. Instead, it forces Scrooge to experience the boy's physical reality. For a fleeting, horrific moment, Scrooge feels the ache in his own limbs, the feverish heat behind his eyes, the raspy breath that doesn't quite fill the lungs. He feels the boy's quiet, constant pain. Pain that could be eased with a few shillings for a doctor or better food. The crutch beside the hearth is no longer a symbol of tragic fate. It's a receipt for Scrooge's greed. When the toast is proposed, the judge shows Scrooge a vision of what Mrs. Cratchit truly feels. For a moment, he sees her screaming at her husband. How can you praise the man who is killing our child? The man who works you to the bone in a freezing cage? The vision fades, but the feeling remains. He now understands their Christmas cheer is a desperate ritual to keep the crushing reality of their lives at bay. He hasn't just seen their poverty. He has felt the suffocating weight of their powerlessness, a powerlessness he personally enforces every single day. From the Cratchits, the judge drags him through the dark underbelly of the city. He's taken to a debtor's prison, a place he champions when he asks, "Are there no prisons?" In this vision, he's forced to stand in a cell with a man whose business failed because of a loan from Scrooge and Marley. A loan with interest so high it was designed to fail. He feels the damp cold seeping from the stone walls. He hears the man's children crying, and the judge whispers, "Their hunger is the interest on your investment. Their tears are your profit margin." Next, he is shown the home of his nephew, Fred. In the original, Scrooge watches a party where Fred pities his uncle, but the judge twists this scene. Scrooge watches the party games, but the laughter sounds mocking. The judge makes him see himself as the subject of a horror story they tell for fun. Fred's defense of him is reframed not as kindness, but as clinical pity, the way one might pity a rabid dog. They do not see a man, the judge clarifies. They see a cautionary tale, a spectre of greed. Your name isn't a name, it's a curse they use to frighten their children into sharing. He is a ghost at their feast, long before he is dead. Finally, the judge brings him back to his own counting house. It's dark and empty. But the judge populates it with phantoms. It conjures the image of a young clerk from years ago, who died of consumption after catching a chill in the freezing tank. It shows him Caroline, the debtor from the original story, weeping with her husband, realizing they will be turned out into the street right after Christmas. The judge saves its final illusion for last. It makes Scrooge see his reflection in the dark window. But the reflection is the face of Jacob Marley, contorted in agony, wrapped in chains of cash boxes and ledgers. "This is your present," the judge whispers, its voice the rattling of Marley's chains. "You're already him. You just haven't died yet. Every choice you make adds another link to the chain you're forging right now. You're not on a path to this fate. You are actively living it." Scrooge is thrown back into the darkness. He hasn't just been shown the world, he has been shown his monstrous place within it. He is not an observer of suffering, he is its central pillar. The present isn't a place of potential change. It is an active crime scene, and he is the sole perpetrator. And the most terrifying judge is yet to come. The judge of the future, the legacy of ruin. The toll of the third hour isn't a sound. It's a vibration that shakes Scrooge to his bones. Light itself seems to die, pulled into a black hole in the center of the room. From this void, a figure emerges. It's not the silent phantom of the book. This is the judge of the future, and it's not ambiguous at all. Its form is a shifting collage of decay, rotting ledgers, rusted locks, and splintering floorboards from repossessed homes. Its face is a blank death mask, and its voice is the dry, final sound of a coffin lid closing. This judge isn't here to show Scrooge shadows of what may be. It's here to pronounce sentence on what will be, a future set in stone by his crimes. Its purpose is to show him not just the indifference his death will cause, but the active, celebrated improvement his absence will bring. The first scene isn't businessmen gossiping about his death. The judge takes him to his counting house, just after the news of his death arrives. Bob Cratchit is there, but he isn't crying. The judge forces Scrooge to watch the slow realization dawn on his clerk's face. The terror that has defined Bob's life begins to fade. Scrooge watches as Bob walks to the coal scuttle, looks at it, and then, with a deliberate act of liberation, puts 3 large lumps of coal on the fire. The blaze is a beacon of freedom. He is not mourning you, the judge's dead voice intones. He is celebrating the end of his servitude. Your death is his first warm day in a decade. This brings us to the scavengers picking over his belongings. In Dickens's tale, it's a grim commentary on how little he was valued. Here, it is a trial. The judge forces Scrooge to stand among them and hear their cackling as a desperate reclaiming of value. The bed curtains they tear down, the shirt they take from his corpse, these aren't acts of theft. The judge makes him understand they are reparations. They are not stealing from you. The judge's voice overlays the charwoman's laughter. They are collecting on a debt of fear and abuse. You hoarded everything in life. In death, your body itself is just another asset to be liquidated. But the judge's main evidence is about the systemic consequence of his life. In this vision, it transports him to a courtroom months after his death, where a full inquiry into the firm of Scrooge and Marley has been launched. The judge forces Scrooge to sit in the defendant's box. He sees the faces of men he drove to bankruptcy, widows he turned into the street. He's forced to listen to hours of testimony detailing his imagined crimes. Fraud, illegal usury, and embezzlement. The good man of business is revealed to be a financial predator. The name Scrooge, once a symbol of reliability, becomes a byword for criminal greed. The judge then shows him the firm's true legacy. Scrooge and Marley collapses under scandal. Its assets are seized. But this doesn't lead to ruin. A new ethical company rises from the ashes, founded on Fezziwig's principles. It provides fair loans and treats its employees with dignity. The judge forces Scrooge to watch as this new enterprise thrives. The businesses he would have destroyed are now flourishing. The world isn't just moving on without him. It is actively and demonstrably better. His whole life's work was just a blockage in the arteries of society, and his death was the event that allowed life to flow again. The final vision is the most damning. The judge takes him to the Cratchit home 1 year later. Tiny Tim is not dead. He is running, laughing. With Scrooge gone, Bob found work at the new, humane firm. His salary more than doubled. They could afford doctors and good food. Scrooge's death was the cure. The judge turns Scrooge to face the boy. In the future, you were trying to avoid, it says, the one where you change your ways. You would have saved him. You would have earned his love. But in this future, the true future, you did not save him. Your removal saved him. His life is not a testament to your potential for redemption. It's the ultimate proof of your toxicity. The single greatest act of kindness you ever performed was to die. Finally, the judge takes him to the lonely churchyard and points to a neglected grave. He knows whose it is, but instead of an unvisited grave, it shows him something worse. A group of children are playing nearby. One points to the headstone. "That's old Scrooge," the child says. "My father said he was a monster." They dare each other to touch the stone, treating it like the cage of a long-dead beast. He's not forgotten. He is a local legend, a boogeyman. His legacy isn't indifference, it's horror. The judge of the future leans in, its face a void. "This is your immortality," it rasps, "to be a lesson, to be a monster. This is the only mark you will leave." It points one final time, not at the grave, but at Scrooge himself. Your sentence is about to be carried out. The verdict and sentence. The three spectral judges now stand before Scrooge. The architect of trauma, the mirror of cruelty, and the herald of ruin. The trial is over. The judge of the past speaks first. "You have been shown the choices that forged you. You saw kindness and calculated its inefficiencies. You traded love for profit. You are guilty of murdering your own heart." The judge of the present speaks next. "You have been shown the consequences of your existence. Your wealth is a plague on the poor. You are guilty of waging a war against the human spirit." The judge of the future speaks last. "You have been shown the world without you, a world that flourishes in your absence. Your death is not a tragedy, but a net good for humanity. You are guilty of a life so devoid of value that your non-existence is a blessing." Scrooge, trembling, waits for the end. He expects oblivion. It would be a mercy. The judges do not deal in mercy. "Your sentence is not death," the three judges speak in unison. "Death would be a release. Your punishment must be as complex and unending as your crimes." The first judge raises a hand, and the past closes around him. The second raises its hand, and the weight of the present bears down. The third raises its hand, and the horrifying future becomes his reality. "You are sentenced to eternity," they pronounce. "You will be trapped in a loop, a perpetual reliving of this very night. You will be visited by us again and again. You will see the pain you caused, feel the suffering you inflicted, and understand the joyous ruin your death brings forever." Scrooge screams as the room dissolves, not into the cheerful light of Christmas morning, but back to the oppressive darkness of the beginning of the night. He sees Marley's face on the door knocker. He hears the clock begin to strike 1. It is happening again. But here is the true horror of the sentence. Each time he goes through it, the experience is layered with the memory of all the previous loops. The pain accumulates. The terror compounds. He isn't just reliving the night. He is being buried alive under the weight of infinite identical nights. He remembers every scream and knows with perfect, soul-crushing certainty that it will all happen again, exactly the same way. He is trapped, not in a story of redemption, but in a perfect, self-contained, and eternal engine of psychological torture. An engine he himself built. He is not given a second chance at life. He is given an eternity to repent in a hell constructed from the fabric of his own sins. This is not the end of it. For Ebenezer Scrooge, there is no end. There is only the beginning, again and again, forever. This deconstruction of Scrooge's story leaves us in a dark, unsettling place. It rejects the fairy tale resolution and replaces it with a verdict of unending damnation. Instead of a man reborn, we're left with a soul trapped in a recursive labyrinth of its own making. Why does this darker version have such a grim appeal? Why do some modern creators and audiences feel compelled to strip away the festive charm and expose the rot? Perhaps it's because the original redemption, while beautiful, feels unbalanced. It prioritizes the salvation of the perpetrator over justice for the victims. Scrooge's happy ending erases the decades of trauma he inflicted, tying up a lifetime of abuse with a Christmas bow. Our sense of moral math, honed by a world where greed often goes unpunished, rebels against that. We crave a balancing of the scales. This reimagining is a fantasy of perfect justice. It imagines a world where sins aren't just forgiven, they're used as the building blocks for punishment. Scrooge isn't destroyed, he's recycled. His cold logic and obsession with balances are used to create a hell perfectly tailored to him. It's a terrifyingly elegant form of cosmic accounting. This darker tale forces us to confront an uncomfortable question that Dickens's original story sidesteps. Is a single redeemed soul worth more than a legacy of unredeemed suffering? Is forgiveness always the highest virtue, or are some actions so steeped in calculated harm that the only moral response is retribution, not redemption? The enduring power of A Christmas Carol is that it can be anything: a heartwarming tale of hope, a comedy, or, as we've explored, a vessel for pure horror. It's a mirror that reflects the anxieties of the era that retells it. In a time of vast inequality, maybe our fascination with a punitive Scrooge reveals a deep-seated desire for accountability. We want to believe that sooner or later, everyone has to pay their debts. And that leaves us with one last, nagging question. Does every villain deserve a chance to be redeemed? Or are some actions unforgivable? Is the point of justice to heal the offender, or to honor the pain of the offended? Let me know what you think in the comments below. I'm always fascinated to read your own theories about these classic tales. If you enjoy this kind of deep dive into the darker side of literature, please consider subscribing. We have many more trials to conduct and many more cherished stories to put in the dock. Thanks for watching. I didn't mean to spend Christmas Eve on the Corvus Vale moor with blood in my shoes and something on my trail that didn't care about roads, locks, prayers, or the fact that the entire world was supposed to be soft and safe for one night. I meant to drive home. That was the whole plan. Do the last shift, grab the last bag of presents, make it back in time for my mum's annual ritual of overcooking everything and pretending it's rustic. I'd wrapped gifts in my lunch break like a normal person. I'd even bought those novelty crackers with the tiny plastic comb inside, because my dad finds them hilarious for reasons I don't understand. By 5:30, the city was already glittering with lights, and everyone looked like they had somewhere to be and someone waiting. I wanted that. I wanted the normal rush. I wanted the warm ending. Instead, I took a shortcut. It wasn't even a reckless shortcut. It was just the sat-nav being helpful, the way these things are helpful right up until they're not. The main road was crawling with holiday traffic, and the map showed a quicker route cutting across the moor toward Corvus Vale, then looping back to the larger roads beyond it. I'd heard of Corvus Vale the same way you hear of any place you don't intend to visit. It comes up as a warning, a joke, a local rumour you never bother to fact-check. People say the village is funny. People say the signal dies there. People say the crows are too bold, and the fog comes in wrong. People say it's the sort of place where a missing dog poster stays pinned for 10 years because nobody ever finds enough to take it down. It sounded like folklore. It sounded like the kind of thing people say when they're bored. So, when my sat-nav offered a route through it, I tapped yes without thinking. The first 20 minutes were fine. The roads narrowed, the traffic thinned, and the sky became a heavy black lid. Sleet speckled the windscreen, and the wipers squeaked in protest. I turned the heating up and watched my breath stop fogging the glass. Then the sleet turned into snow, not pretty flakes, but harsh pellets that bounced off the bonnet and rattled like handfuls of gravel. The radio started crackling, carols slipping in and out like someone was turning the dial with wet fingers. I told myself it was just the weather. The lane climbed, the hedgerows fell away. The landscape opened up into that moorland emptiness that always makes you feel smaller than you should. Out there, even the sky feels closer, as if it could press you flat. My phone buzzed with a message from my mum. "Where are you? It's getting late." I tried to reply, and the message failed to send. No signal. I glanced at the top corner. The bars were gone. I felt a small flare of annoyance, as if losing signal was a personal insult. Then my sat-nav screen froze. The little arrow that was supposed to be me stopped moving. The blue line that was supposed to be my route faded, then vanished, replaced by a blank grey grid like a dead game board. I tapped the screen. Nothing. I unplugged it and plugged it back in. Nothing. The radio cut out completely, and the sudden silence made the car feel like a sealed box. I slowed down, peering at the road ahead. Because when you lose your map on the moor at night, you realize how quickly your confidence evaporates. There were no streetlights, no farmhouses, no distant glow. Just my headlights, and the lane curving into darkness, like it was leading somewhere it didn't want to show me yet. After a while, the lane dipped and straightened, and I saw something pale in the road. At first it looked like a snowdrift, a low white mound. Then my headlights caught the shape, and my stomach tightened. It was a deer. Not a live deer. It was a carcass, propped awkwardly on its legs as if someone had posed it in the exact center of the lane. Its head lolled to one side. Snow clung to its fur in dirty clumps. The throat was torn open, the kind of tear that doesn't happen from a neat predator bite, but from force and teeth and a terrible hurry. I braked, tires slipping on the thin ice under the snow. The car shuddered to a stop a few meters away. For a moment I just stared. You don't see things like that in the road. Not like that, not posed, not as if it's meant to be noticed. The smell hit me a second later, seeping through the vents like the car had inhaled it. Wet fur, blood, that heavy metallic stink that makes your throat want to close. I reached for my phone again, more out of reflex than logic, and saw the screen had gone dark. No power, no bars. Nothing. I told myself to breathe. I told myself it was probably some sick prank. A poacher. A farmer clearing the lane. Anything that made sense. Then I saw the marks in the snow beside the deer. Tracks. They weren't deer tracks. They weren't fox tracks. They were too deep and too wide, and they didn't look like paws so much as hands pressed into the ground with too much weight behind them. I stared at those impressions, trying to force my brain to decide what I was looking at. And then something moved beyond the deer, just outside the brightest cone of my headlights. A shadow shifted, not fast, not startled. It moved with a slow certainty, like it knew exactly where my light ended and began. My breath hitched. I couldn't see the whole thing, but I saw enough to know it was tall. Too tall. It rose above the deer carcass, and for a second my headlights caught a glint that might have been an eye, pale and reflective like a cat, except it was higher than it should have been. I fumbled for the door lock button and pressed it, as if that would matter. My fingers were clumsy with cold and fear. The shadow took one step forward. It wasn't a normal step. It was a shift of weight, a long limb moving with a kind of reluctant balance, like something that didn't entirely belong upright. My chest tightened. Every instinct screamed at me to move. I slammed the car into reverse. The engine coughed. Then it died. The dashboard lights stayed on. The headlights stayed on. But the engine went silent, and the silence felt intentional, like the moor itself had swallowed the sound. I tried to start it again. Nothing. I tried again, harder, turning the key until it hurt my wrist. Nothing. Outside, the shadow didn't rush me. It didn't need to. It was already winning simply by waiting. I stared at the deer, the tracks, the darkness behind it. My throat felt tight, as if the air had thickened. Then I heard the sound that snapped my last thread of rationality. A low exhale. It came from the passenger side window, close enough to fog the glass. I turned my head slowly. The window was dark, but I saw the faint smear of condensation appear on the outside, as if something warm had leaned close. Then, very softly, there was a scraping sound. Nails. Not little nails. Not a twig. Not an animal paw. Nails drawn down glass with careful pressure, testing the surface like a person might test a drum skin. I made a noise that wasn't quite a scream and wasn't quite a breath. I shoved the door open and ran. I ran into the snow, leaving my presents, leaving my phone, leaving my normal life behind with the dead engine. I ran until my lungs burned and my boots slipped on the uneven ground. Brambles snagged my coat. Frigid air cut into my throat like knives. I didn't look back. I didn't want to see how easily it could follow. After what felt like forever, I saw a light. Not a bright light. Not the warm glow of a village street. Just a single yellow lamp in the distance, low to the ground, flickering as if it wasn't sure it wanted to be seen. I aimed for it, like it was a lifeline. The light belonged to a building that shouldn't have been there. It was a stone cottage, squat and dark, built into a shallow dip in the moor, as if the land had tried to hide it. The roof was slate and heavy with snow. The windows were small, and only one downstairs window showed light, the curtain half drawn. I stumbled to the door and grabbed the handle. It opened immediately. Not only unlocked, but already ajar, as if it had been waiting for me. Warm air spilled out, smelling of peat smoke and something sweet, like cloves. My skin prickled with relief and fear in equal measure. I stepped inside and slammed the door shut behind me, throwing the bolt with shaking hands. For a few seconds I just stood there, back against the wood, listening to my own breathing. The cottage wasn't silent. A fire crackled somewhere. A clock ticked. A kettle hissed faintly, as if it had been taken off the boil and left to cool. Someone lived here. Or something did. "Hello?" I called, forcing my voice to sound normal. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to break in. My car broke down on the road." No answer. I moved down a narrow hallway. Coats hung on hooks, damp and heavy. Muddy boots were lined neatly against the wall. A wreath hung above a table, made of twisted branches and dark berries that looked almost black in the low light. The floorboards creaked under my boots. I reached the sitting room and saw the fire. It was real, glowing in a stone hearth. A small Christmas tree stood in the corner, decorated with wooden ornaments and strings of dried oranges. It looked handmade and old-fashioned, the kind of Christmas you see in vintage photos. On the mantelpiece were stockings, 4 of them stitched with names: Marion, Alistair, Robbie, Elsie. I stared at those names longer than I should have, because something about them made my skin prickle. They looked too worn, too old, like they'd been hung every year out of habit even after the people who owned them stopped coming home. Then I saw the scratches. Deep grooves in the door frame leading into the sitting room, as if something had raked its claws into the wood and dragged them down. I leaned closer. The scratches were on the inside. My heart started hammering again. I backed away, turning toward the kitchen, because if someone lived here, I needed a person. I needed an explanation. I needed a phone. The kitchen was dim but warm. A kettle sat on the stove. A mug was on the counter. A small radio was there too, but its dial was cracked and the aerial bent. An old woman stood by the sink. She was smaller than I'd expected, wrapped in a thick cardigan, grey hair pinned back tightly. She was stirring something in a mug, as if she'd been doing it for hours. Her hands didn't shake. Her eyes were pale and sharp. "You shouldn't have come in," she said. "I'm sorry," I blurted. "My car broke down and I saw your light. I didn't know where else to go." She looked at me for a long moment, then glanced toward the window like she could see through the walls. "It's Christmas Eve," she said quietly. Something about the way she said it made my stomach sink, as if Christmas Eve here meant something different. "Do you have a phone?" I asked. "I don't have any signal." "No signal comes here," she said. "I need to call someone," I said, my voice rising. "My family will be waiting." The woman set the spoon down with slow care. "You need to sit," she said. "You're shaking." I realized she was right. My legs felt unsteady, like they might fold. I sat at the small kitchen table because it was easier than arguing. She slid the mug toward me. Tea, strong and sweet. I took it without thinking, craving warmth. The woman sat opposite me and folded her hands. "You're not from Corvus Vale," she said. I blinked. Corvus Vale's real then. She didn't smile. "It's real enough," she said. "Can you help me?" I asked. "There was something in the road, a dead deer, and I think there was someone out there." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Not someone," she said. A cold knot formed in my gut. "What do you mean?" I asked. The woman reached into her cardigan pocket and placed something on the table. A small brass bell. Heavy, worn smooth. "If you hear tapping," she said, "you ring that. You ring it until your hand hurts." "Tapping," I repeated stupidly. She looked at me like I was slow. "It likes doors," she said. "It likes windows. It likes to be invited." My mouth went dry. "What is it?" The woman's gaze held mine, flat and unblinking. "It's on the moor," she said, "and it won't leave because it smelled you." A noise came from the sitting room. A soft thump, like something bumped the outside wall. I froze, tea halfway to my mouth. The woman stood quickly. "Come," she said, "away from the windows." I followed her into the sitting room, bell clutched in my hand. She pulled the curtains shut and pinned them tight with a heavy clip. "Don't look out," she said. "Don't speak if you hear a voice." I swallowed hard. "Is there a back door?" "There is," she said. "It'll find it too." Another thump against the wall closer. My breathing turned shallow. "What do we do?" I whispered. The woman's lips pressed together. "We wait," she said, "and we don't open anything." The tapping started at the front window, gentle at first. 3 taps like polite knuckles. Then again. I stared at the pinned curtain. I could see the faintest bulge, as if something was pressing close, testing the fabric. My throat tightened. The tapping moved, sliding along the wall to the next window, slow and deliberate, like it was circling the cottage, mapping it. The old woman's voice was low and urgent. "Don't answer," she whispered. "It'll try." A voice came from outside, not a howl, not a growl. A voice, clear and human, right outside the wall. "Marion," it said softly. The old woman flinched so hard it looked like she'd been slapped. "Marion," the voice repeated. It's cold. My skin crawled. The voice was too close, too calm. It sounded like someone speaking to a loved one through a door. The woman backed away from the window, her face pale. It's not him, she whispered, though she wasn't talking to me. The voice changed tone, becoming lighter. Nana, it called, small and plaintive. My stomach turned. The names on the stockings flashed through my mind. Robbie, Elsie. The voice outside giggled softly, like a child teasing. Let me in, it said. The old woman's jaw trembled, but her eyes were hard. Ring, she whispered to me. I lifted the bell, fingers shaking. The voice outside shifted again, like it was sampling different masks. This time, it said my name. Not a guess. Not a generic, hello. My actual name, spoken with a warmth that made my blood run cold. Come on, it said. I'll get you home for Christmas. I felt a sharp, sick jolt of fear because there was no way it should know that. I rang the bell. The sound cut through the room, bright and sharp. Outside, the voice stopped. Then came a snarl, low and furious, like a dog being burned. Something slammed into the wall. The cottage shuddered. I rang the bell again. The snarl turned into a scream. Not a human scream, not a wolf howl, but something that contained both, twisted together, rage and pain fighting in the same throat. The old woman's hands clenched at her sides. Again, she said. I rang it again, my wrist aching. Outside, the footsteps retreated, crunching in snow. The pressure against the window eased. For a moment, there was only the crackle of the fire. My breath came out in shaky bursts. It hates the bell, I whispered. The old woman stared into the hearth. It hates reminders, she said. No, I didn't ask what she meant because I didn't want anything explained. Explanations make things real, and I wasn't ready for that. Another sound came from outside, farther now, a dragging scrape. Like something heavy being pulled across stone. The old woman's head snapped up. No, she whispered, and for the first time her calm fractured. The scrape came again, closer. Then I realized what it was doing. It was dragging something to the door, something heavy, something it wanted us to see. The bell felt slick in my palm. The door handle moved, just a slight turn, testing the lock. Then the voice again, softer, coaxing. I've got a gift for you, it said. It's Christmas Eve. The door shook under a heavy impact. Once. Twice. The wood creaked. The old woman grabbed my arm with surprising strength. You ring, she said. Don't stop. I rang the bell hard. The creature outside snarled, but the door shook again, harder, as if pain didn't matter anymore. I rang again. The lock groaned. The old woman moved to the hearth and pulled out a thick iron chain, coiled and old, leaving rust stains on her hands. She dragged it toward the door, jaw clenched. My stomach dropped. You chain it, I whispered. Not quite, she said, her voice tight. The door slammed again, and this time something splintered. A thin crack formed along the frame. Freezing air seeped in, carrying that wet fur stink and something sharper, like fresh blood. I rang the bell again and again, the sound blurring into one continuous ringing. Outside, the creature screamed and slammed, alternating between rage and sudden quiet that felt worse, because quiet meant thinking. Then suddenly it stopped. Complete silence. My ears rang from the bell. My wrist burned. I froze, listening. The old woman went very still. A voice came from outside again, but it was different. It sounded strained, like it had dragged itself through broken teeth to become human enough to speak. "Please," it said, almost a whisper. "Open the door." The old woman's face tightened in a way that made my chest ache, because I saw grief there, raw and old, and I realized this wasn't the first time she'd heard that voice. She took a step toward the door. I grabbed her sleeve. "Don't," I hissed. She shook me off. The voice outside spoke again, quieter. "I can't stop," it said. "I'm hungry." The door handle moved, not violently, but carefully, like a person trying not to wake someone. The old woman lifted the chain with both hands. She reached for the lock. I wanted to scream at her, to stop her, to do anything. But fear pinned me. She unlocked the door. It opened a crack. Cold air rushed in, and through that crack I saw it. Not clearly, not fully, but enough. Her pale eye, high in the darkness. A long snout, wet and black, breathing steam. A hand, not a paw, gripping the frame, nails long and chipped like old knives. The bell rang again because my fingers spasmed. The creature recoiled with a roar, and in that movement the door opened wider for a heartbeat, and the firelight spilled out onto its body. It was tall, hunched but enormous, fur matted with snow and something dark. Its shoulders were wrong, too high. Its limbs were too long. Its mouth was full of teeth that weren't neat, not animal symmetrical, but jagged and crowded, as if its skull'd been forced into a shape it didn't want. It lunged forward. The old woman slammed the door shut just in time, and claws raked the wood, leaving fresh grooves. The impact shook the cottage. The chair by the door rattled. The old woman's voice went sharp. "Ring!" she shouted. "Ring until it backs away." I rang the bell until my wrist felt like it might snap. Outside, the creature snarled and slammed, but I heard something else now. A wet sound, like it was licking the crack in the door, tasting the air. Then the voice came again, almost playful, muffled by the wood. "I can smell you," it said. "You're bleeding already." My stomach dropped. I looked down and realized my hand was cut, probably from a bramble when I ran, or from grabbing the chain, or from anything. It was a small cut, nothing serious, but the sight of blood felt like a death sentence. The door slammed again, and this time a chunk of wood split near the latch. The old woman braced herself against the door with both hands, her small body shaking with the force of each impact. "It wasn't meant to be like this," the old woman groaned. "Why the hell did you open the door?" I screamed. "It wasn't supposed to be locked," she said through gritted teeth. "You shouldn't have come here. You have ruined everything." I backed away. I didn't do this. I don't even know what's happening." The woman struggled to squeeze what was left of the lock back in place. "Ring the damn bell!" she exclaimed. Another slam. The lock held, barely. I rang the bell until my ears stung, and the beating ceased. She took a step away from the door, panting. "What is it? Why is it here?" I asked softly. "It comes when the snow is thick," she gasped. "It comes when people are travelling. It comes when doors are opened for tradition." She paused. "I open my door so others don't have to. It is my job, my family's role in Corvus Vale, our destiny." "You were going to sacrifice yourself?" I whimpered. "No, child," she half chuckled. "The chain keeps it at bay, chases it away for another year. The reasons have been lost through time, but it works, so we don't question it." "So why you didn't throw it at the thing when you had the chance?" I cried. "It's too late." She scolded. "I I saw its eyes. The time for pacifying is over. I must A sound. Tap. 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 And then, through the wall came a wet, muffled sound that made my skin crawl. Chewing. The old woman squeezed her eyes shut, and I realized with horror that it had brought something to the window. It wanted us to hear. It wanted us to know what it could do. The chewing got louder, messy, and thick. Then a crack. A bone. I clapped a hand over my mouth to stop myself gagging. The old woman opened her eyes, and her expression was like stone. She moved to the window, keeping her back to it, and spoke to me without looking away. "Whatever you hear," she said, "you don't move the curtain." I nodded quickly, eyes wide. The chewing continued. Then a new sound joined it, a soft, dragging thump, like something being shifted closer. Then something hit the glass, a wet slap, and a smear slid down the window. Visible even through the curtain was a dark dampness spreading across the fabric. Blood. My breath caught. The old woman's hands clenched. The creature outside made a deep sound that could have been satisfaction. And the voice came again, right against the glass, intimate. "Merry Christmas," it whispered. The old woman took a step back from the window. "Bell," she said. I rang it again. Outside, the creature snarled, but the chewing stopped. Footsteps moved away, fast this time. Hoped that meant it was weakening. I was very wrong. The old woman grabbed my arm again. "We can't stay." "What?" I gasped. "It will break in eventually," she said. "Or it will wait until you're too tired to ring." My heart hammered. "Where do we go?" Her gaze flicked to the back of the cottage. "To Corvus Vale," she said. I stared at her, stunned. "You said it won't leave. It follows scent and it wants you. But Corvus Vale has lights and doors and people." A sadness crept into her voice. "And a failsafe," she added softly. A crash sounded at the front of the cottage. The door shuttered again, as if the creature had decided it was bored of the window game. The old woman pulled the chain up, slung it over her shoulder, and shoved a coat at me. "Put that on," she ordered. I grabbed the coat, thick and heavy, and jammed my arms through it. My fingers fumbled. My mind was screaming that none of this was real. The old woman unlocked the back door. Chilly air rushed in immediately, carrying snow and that wet fur stink, but fainter. We stepped out into the darkness behind the cottage. The moor stretched out, pale under thin moonlight. Snow drifted in uneven ripples. In the distance, I saw a faint glow that could have been village lights, weak and far. The old woman moved fast for her age, boots crunching, chain clinking softly. I followed, lungs burning, bell clutched in my hand like a useless talisman. Behind us, the front door exploded inward. Not fully, but enough for a splintering crack that echoed across the moor. A roar followed, deep and furious. My blood turned to ice. "It knows," I whispered. The old woman didn't answer. She just kept moving. We crossed open ground, wind biting at our faces. Snow stung my eyes. My heart hammered so hard I felt dizzy. Then I heard it behind us. Footsteps. Heavy, uneven impacts, like something running upright and hating every second of it. The old woman hissed, "Don't look." But I couldn't help it. I glanced back. In the distance I saw a shape cresting the small rise behind the cottage. Tall, dark, moving with a loping gait that ate ground too quickly. It stopped for a moment, as if sniffing. Then it turned its head toward us, and even from that distance I felt its attention lock on like a weight. I looked forward again and ran harder. The lights of Corvus Vale grew brighter, but not fast enough. The creature gained. The old woman stumbled once, catching herself. The chain slipped from her shoulder and clanked loudly. The sound carried. The creature roared again, closer. The old woman shoved the chain into my arms. "Take it. Find Tom. He will know what to do," she said. I stared at her. "What are you doing?" She reached into her pocket and pulled out another bell. "I will distract it," she said. "No," I choked. "No, come with me." She grabbed my face with both hands, fingers cold and firm. "You will run," she said. "You will reach the village. You won't stop. You won't look back. You will make noise. You will find people. You will get inside somewhere bright." Her eyes were fierce, and for a moment her fear vanished into something like purpose. "It wants one," she whispered. "If it takes one, it won't take 10. Before I could respond, she turned and ran sideways, away from the direct path to the village, toward a cluster of rocks half buried in snow. She rang her bell. The sound cut through the wind. The creature's footsteps shifted immediately, angling toward her. I screamed after her. I didn't even know her name. I wanted to be brave. I wanted to run after her. Fight this thing. Do something. But I didn't. I just ran. I ran toward Corvus Vale, chain and bell bouncing in my arms, tears freezing on my cheeks. Behind me, I heard her bell ring again. Then I heard the creature. A roar closer than I wanted to believe. A scream. Human. Short. Cut off. My stomach lurched. I almost stopped. My body wanted to turn, to help, to do anything. But her words kept me moving. If it takes one, it won't take 10. The village lights grew larger, resolving into shapes. Houses, stone walls, a narrow road, a lamppost with a wreath hanging from it. Christmas lights strung across a pub sign. Corvus Vale. It looked almost normal, and that normality made my fear feel ridiculous for half a second. Then I saw the first thing that proved it wasn't normal at all. A wooden sign at the edge of the village, half covered in snow. "Welcome to Corvus Vale." Below that, smaller, carved into the wood like an afterthought. "Keep your doors shut." I stumbled into the village street, panting hard. Windows glowed with warm light. I saw a few cars parked along the road. I even saw a string of paper snowflakes taped inside one window. Relief hit me so hard my knees went weak. I ran to the first house and hammered the door. "Help!" I yelled. "Please, help!" No answer. I hammered again. Harder. Until my knuckles hurt. A curtain twitched at an upstairs window. Someone was there. I shouted again. "Please, let me in. Something is out here." The curtain snapped closed. No one came. I stared at the door, stunned. Another house. Another door. Same thing. Lights on, silence inside, and curtains that moved like eyes looking away. My chest tightened with panic. This was a village full of people pretending not to hear. I ran to the pub, because pubs are where people gather, because pubs have phones, because pubs have someone behind the bar who can't ignore you. The sign swung gently in the wind. A crow sat on top of it, white, almost matching the snow, watching me with too much interest. The pub door was locked. I rattled it, banged on it. Through the glass I saw light, but no movement. I pressed my face close and looked inside. The pub was empty. Chairs were stacked. The bar was dark. A Christmas garland hung half-torn above the mirror, drooping like something dead. A faint smell lingered. Stale beer and smoke, and something else under it. Blood. Not fresh, But there, a rusty tang that made my throat tighten. I stumbled back from the glass. Behind me, the village was too quiet. No music, no laughter, no televisions, no dogs barking, only wind and distant crows. Then I heard a sound from the edge of the village, footsteps, crunching snow, slow, patient. My blood went cold. It had followed. I turned toward the road I had come in on, and in the dim light beyond the lampposts, I saw a tall shape standing at the village boundary. It wasn't rushing now. It wasn't snarling. It stood upright, hunched slightly, head tilted as if listening. Then it took a step forward into the pool of yellow lamplight. I saw it clearly for the first time. It was enormous. Its fur was matted and dark, clumped with snow. Its shoulders rolled under the fur like something powerful and wrong. Its hands were long, fingers ending in nails that looked blunt until you realized they were simply thick like tools. Its mouth was wet, and something dark dripped from its chin. It lifted its head and looked straight at me. Its eyes were pale. Its lips pulled back, revealing teeth too long for its jaw. It smiled. A horrible, knowing smile, like it understood I had reached people and still had nowhere to go. I stumbled backward, heart hammering. The creature stepped forward again. The old woman had been wrong, or Corvus Vale wasn't the kind of village that frightened monsters. Corvus Vale looked like a place that hosted them. I ran. I ran down the main street, slipping on ice, breath tearing my lungs. I looked for any door open, any person willing to act human. I saw a church at the far end, stone and squat, its windows dark. A wreath hung on the door. A small nativity scene sat in the snow out front. Mary and Joseph half buried, faces blank. I sprinted for it, because churches are meant to be safe, because my brain reached for old instincts. My body slammed against the heavy door. I pulled with all my strength, but the door wouldn't budge. I lay my head against the aging wood, heart hammering, and began to cry. It was over. I knew I would die here, alone in the snow, outside a place that should have represented safety and belonging. "Push, you fool!" a voice from high above chided. "It's a push door. Hurry, lock it behind you." "Oh, for shit's sake," I exclaimed, cursing my stupidity. I hurried inside, slamming the rusted bolt across as fast as I could. The frame shuddered as the thing crashed against it from the outside. Its attack was relentless. I pressed my aching back against it, praying it would hold. Then, a bell. Not the one in my hand, but the church bell above me, deep and heavy, ringing once through the cold stone like a deliberate warning. The sound filled the nave and pushed outward through the doors, rolling across the snow and into the dark beyond the Corvus Vale. Outside, the creature reacted immediately. The tapping stopped, and for a brief, terrifying moment, there was complete silence. Then a roar tore through the night, so close and so violent that dust shook loose from the rafters. It wasn't an animal sound. It was rage given breath, a scream forced through a mouth that no longer fit words. The bell rang again, faster this time. The rope yanked hard enough that the sound wobbled. Footsteps echoed inside the church, hurried and uneven, coming from somewhere along the side aisle. "Here," a voice hissed urgently. "Do not stand there. Come now." I turned and saw a man stepping out from the shadows between the pews. He was tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a vicar's collar beneath a heavy coat that looked like it had been pulled on without thought. His white hair clung damply to his forehead, and his face was tight with concentration rather than fear. He did not wait for me to speak. He grabbed my arm and hauled me toward a small wooden door set into the side wall of the church. "It does not like the bell," he said quickly, breathless but controlled. That is why I rang it. That is also why it will come harder now. The church doors behind me shuddered as something slammed into them from the outside. The impact reverberated through the stone floor and into my bones. The vicar shoved the side door open and pulled me through, then slammed it shut and threw the bolt with practiced speed. The bell above us rang again, wild and angry. "Down," he said, already pushing past me. "Watch your step." A narrow stone staircase descended beneath the church. The air changed immediately, colder and damp, smelling of earth and old dust rather than mould and incense. The vicar moved fast, lighting a lantern with shaking hands only once we reached the bottom. The cellar was low and cramped, its stone walls lined with shelves holding candles, sacks of grain, and old tools worn smooth by use. It felt functional rather than hidden, like a place that had been prepared for exactly this. I sank down against the wall, my legs finally giving way as pain flared sharp and hot through my side. I didn't even know I'd been hurt. The vicar knelt beside me and pressed a folded cloth hard against the wound without asking permission. "It missed anything vital," he said, his voice tight. "You're still standing, which means you're still alive." Above us, the church doors groaned as wood splintered. "It is angry," the vicar muttered. "The bell always does that." "What is it?" I asked, my voice hoarse despite myself. The vicar didn't answer immediately. He tied the cloth tighter, then stood and reached for a thick iron bar fixed into the wall beside the cellar door. "It is something that lives on the moor," he said finally. "It always has and always will. Christmas Eve in Corvus Vale has its own traditions." "People saw me," I said. "They shut their doors." "Yes," he said quietly. "They always do." Another impact struck the church doors harder than before. The sound echoed down into the cellar, followed by a crack that made my stomach drop. "Will it get in?" I whispered. "Yes," the vicar said, "which is why you will not stay." He moved to the back of the cellar and knelt, shifting loose stones aside to reveal a low, arched passage sloping upward, barely tall enough to crawl through. "This leads beyond the graveyard wall," he said, "out past the village edge." "Aren't you coming with me?" I asked, panic sharpening my words. He shook his head once. "No. It is my turn this year, I'm afraid." "Your turn for what?" "Each Christmas Eve, one door must remain unlocked in case the guardian falls. Its presence inside Corvus Vale means she has fallen," he said solemnly. "The old woman?" I asked. "Yes," he said softly. "Marion Copper. God rest his soul." "No, I just need to find Tom. Tom will know what to do," I said hopefully. The vicar stuck out his hand. "Hello," he said cheerfully as I took his hand, confused. He shook it once. "I'm Tom, and I do indeed know what to do. Not every story has a happy ending, my boy." The scraping above us reached the top of the cellar stairs. A faint sound followed, pleased and intimate, like breath drawn in anticipation. The vicar pressed the lantern into my hands. "You run," he said. "You do not knock on doors again. You do not trust lights. You keep moving until you reach Beacon Point Sanatorium. You will be safer there than anywhere else." I held out the chain to him in silent resignation. "Keep it," he whispered. "You'll need it eventually." The cellar door above us buckled inward with a splintering crack. "Go," he said, louder now. I dropped to my knees and crawled into the passage. Tom piled the stones back behind me, extinguishing all light from the cellar. The ceiling pressed down on me immediately, stones scraping my back as the tunnel narrowed. I had to turn my head sideways to breathe properly, my cheek pressed against damp earth. Every movement sent pain tearing through my ribs, and the lantern swung wildly, throwing shadows that made the walls seem like they were closing in. I heard the muffled sound of the cellar door swinging open, and Tom's confident footsteps moving further away. He was moving toward the thing. He had resigned himself to die. The air was thick and cold. Mud soaked my hands and knees as I dragged myself forward, nails slipping on stone, breath coming in short, panicked bursts. The tunnel dipped suddenly, forcing me flat onto my stomach, and icy water flooded the space beneath me, soaking my clothes and stealing my breath. Behind me, something roared. Not far, close enough that I felt it through the ground. Stone ground against stone somewhere above. Claws scraping as it followed the tunnel's path from the surface, tracking me by sound and scent. Each breath I took felt too loud, too slow, like it was announcing my position. The space tightened again, squeezing my shoulders until I had to force myself through inch by inch, sobbing despite myself, skin tearing against rock. For a moment I was sure I would get stuck there, wedged and helpless, waiting for it to dig down to me. I screamed and shoved forward with everything I had. The tunnel began to slope upward. The air shifted. It was still cold, but cleaner, carrying the faint, distant smell of chemicals and old concrete. I burst out of the tunnel and collapsed onto snow, gasping, my lungs burning as freezing air hit my face. The opening behind me yawned like a wound in the earth. I pushed past dense brush and fell to my knees as my feet hit gravel. I was in a courtyard. A gigantic, ancient manor house stood before me. Shadowed in darkness, its bulk loomed against the sky, dark and solid, windows black but unbroken, a shape that looked permanent in a landscape that wanted nothing to last. Behind me, a low, ear-piercing howl came from beyond the trees, too close. I forced myself to my feet and ran toward the entrance, blood soaking my side, breath tearing in my chest, knowing with sick certainty that whatever had followed me out of Corvus Vale had no intention of stopping at its borders. I reached the doors of Beacon Point Sanatorium with my lungs burning and my vision swimming. The building loomed out of the darkness like a slab of old bone, all stone and iron railings, its windows tall and narrow, most of them dark. Snow had drifted across the courtyard in uneven waves, already beginning to cover my footprints behind me. I slammed my fist against the heavy front door and shouted until my throat hurt. There was no answer. The door didn't even shudder. It felt solid, final, like it hadn't opened for anyone in a very long time. I knocked again, harder this time, panic clawing up my chest. My hand left a smear of blood on the painted wood. I pressed my forehead against it and squeezed my eyes shut, trying not to listen to the sounds behind me. The wind carried something else now, a low distant growl that made my stomach drop. I searched for a doorbell in the dim moonlight when my hands brushed an intercom. I pressed it hard. Nothing happened. I rang it again, harder, louder, still nothing. The howl came again, closer this time, echoing off the surrounding walls. I could hear movement in the trees beyond the courtyard, something pacing, circling, taking its time. My legs felt weak. I leaned back against the door, sliding down slightly, breath coming in ragged bursts. This was it. Tom had been wrong, or I had misunderstood. Maybe Beacon Point was just another door that would stay shut. Then a crackle sounded above me. A small speaker set into the wall beside the door buzzed to life. "Yeah?" a woman's voice said, bored and flat, like I had interrupted her mid-sentence. Hope hit me so hard it hurt. "Help me," I gasped, pushing myself upright. "Please, it's coming. It's right outside." There was a pause. "What's coming, sir?" she asked, still calm, still detached. "The monster," I said, my voice breaking. "The thing from the moor. It followed me. It's almost here. Please." Another pause, longer this time. I heard muffled voices on the other side of the speaker, the woman turning away slightly. "Sandra," she said, irritation creeping into her tone. "Did you let a resident out again?" "I'm not a resident," I shouted, panic rising. "I don't live here. I don't bloody live here." The speaker crackled again. There was some movement, a drawer opening, footsteps. When the woman spoke again, she sounded more alert. "Sir," she said, "do you live at Beacon Point?" "No," I said quickly. "But Tom sent me. Tom from Corvus Vale. And Marion. Marion Copper." There was silence. Not the empty silence of being ignored, but the sharp kind, like a room full of people suddenly paying attention. The door buzzer sounded. I didn't hesitate. I threw myself inside and slammed the door shut behind me just as a howl split the night. So loud and close it made the glass vibrate in its frame. The sound followed me into the building, echoing up the stone walls of the entry hall. For a second I stood there shaking, hands braced against the door, waiting for it to burst inward. It didn't. Instead, something else happened. Floodlights snapped on all at once, harsh and blinding, illuminating the entire courtyard outside. Every shadow vanished, replaced by stark white light that left nowhere to hide. At the same moment, bells began to ring. Not one bell. All of them. They rang from every angle, every corner of the grounds. Deep iron bells and sharp brass ones, overlapping and clashing until the air itself seemed to vibrate. The sound poured out into the night like a wall. Outside, the creature screamed. The sound was high and shrill, nothing like the roar I'd heard before. It was pain, raw and furious, dragged out of a throat that couldn't shape it properly. I saw it stagger backward under the lights, its massive shape twisting and recoiling like something caught in a trap. It tried to move forward once, then faltered, clutching at its own head as the bells rang harder, faster, relentless. The sound seemed to tear at it from every direction, leaving it nowhere to escape. Then it turned and ran. It fled across the snow with a speed that was almost impossible, disappearing back into the darkness beyond the trees. Its scream faded into the distance, leaving only the ringing bells and my own ragged breathing behind. The bells slowly fell silent, one by one. The woman from the intercom appeared at the far end of the hall, staring through the reinforced glass at the empty courtyard. She looked pale now, her earlier boredom gone. "You're lucky," she said quietly. "You made it before midnight." I slid down the wall and sat on the cold tiled floor, my strength finally gone. "What is this place?" I asked. She didn't answer straight away. Instead, she looked at me with something like pity. "This," she said, "is where Corvus Vale sends the things that don't stay quiet." Somewhere outside, far beyond the lights, something howled again, and this time, it didn't sound like it was leaving. The woman from reception didn't let me sit for long. She moved around the desk and took my arm, already steering me toward the stairwell. "Upstairs," she said, quickly. I stumbled to my feet and followed her, my legs still trembling. The bells outside had stopped, but the silence felt thin, fragile, like it could tear at any second. We climbed the stairs two at a time, her grip firm on my sleeve. As we reached the landing, she leaned over the desk and spoke to the other receptionist, her voice low and urgent. "Call Morrigan," she said. "Tell her it's time." The other woman didn't question it. She picked up the phone immediately and turned away, already speaking in a tone that suggested this was not a conversation she was having for the first time. I opened my mouth to ask what was happening, but before I could get a word out, a nurse appeared from one of the corridors and gently but decisively took hold of my other arm. "Come on," she said kindly. "You look frozen." "I don't understand," I said as she guided me down the hall. "Why isn't anyone panicking? There's a thing outside, a massive thing. It nearly killed me." She didn't slow down. "There's tea on," she said. "And you'll want clean clothes." The corridor stretched ahead of us, long and bright, the floor marked with thin painted lines that ran parallel to the walls. Red lines, blue lines, black and yellow ones branching off toward different wings. I stared at them as we walked. My stomach tightened. We passed a lounge with its lights dimmed low. Most of the chairs were empty, pushed neatly against the walls. One woman sat alone by the window, her back to us, staring out into the darkness beyond the glass. She didn't move when we passed. The nurse slowed and poked her head into the room. "Shannon," she said gently. "It's getting late." The woman didn't turn. She didn't answer. She just kept looking out at the night, like she was waiting for something to come back. The nurse closed the door quietly and kept walking. She led me into a small room at the end of the corridor. It was plain and clean, a narrow bed against one wall, a chair, a wardrobe that smelled faintly of disinfectant and soap. She set a folded bundle of clothes on the bed and placed a steaming mug on the bedside table. "There," she said. "Get changed. Drink that while it's hot." I looked down at myself then, really looked, and flinched at the state of me. Blood streaked my jacket and soaked into my shirt. Snowmelt clung to my trousers. My hands were red and shaking. "Why aren't you worried?" I asked quietly. "There's a crazy wolf thing outside." She reached out and gently took something from my hands. The chain. I hadn't even realized I was still holding it. She laid it carefully across the bed, arranging it so it didn't tangle. "It'll be dealt with," she said simply. "That's what they all keep saying," I muttered. She gave me a small smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "They're right," she said. "Just not in the way you're expecting." She left me alone then. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long moment, staring at the chain, at the way it seemed heavier now, more solid. Tom's face flickered through my mind. Marion? The bells? The doors? I dressed slowly, my movements stiff and aching, and drank the tea in small, careful sips. It tasted ordinary, comfortingly so. Footsteps approached in the corridor outside, slower this time, measured. A knock came at the door. Before I could answer, it opened. The woman who stepped inside was tall and composed, dressed in dark clothes that looked more ceremonial than practical. Her hair was streaked with grey and pulled back neatly, and her eyes were sharp and knowing. She looked at the chain on the bed, then at me. "Good evening. My name is Madame Morrigan," she said. "I'm sorry it fell to you this way." "I don't know what you mean," I said. "Everyone keeps talking like I've missed something important." She nodded once. "The Guardian is dead," she said. Marion Copper held the line for a very long time. My chest tightened. "And now?" I asked. "And now," she said gently, "the chain has passed on." She gestured to the bed. I tried to give it to Tom, but he wouldn't take it. Tom wouldn't take it from you because he couldn't. It doesn't work like that. Marion entrusted it to you as this night began with you. "I didn't do anything," I said meekly. "It doesn't matter. You stumbled upon a process and dislodged the order. The Guardian failed, and the failsafe failed because of your visit. It was an accident, I cried. This is not a punishment, she soothed, but you're bound to this now. My mouth went dry. You're saying this is mine, I said. I'm saying it chose you, she replied, and now the moor knows you're sent. I stared at her, my head spinning. I didn't agree to this. No one ever does, she said softly. We have a lot of work to do to get you ready for next year, but for now, somewhere deep in the building, a clock began to chime. The sound echoed faintly through the corridors, slow and deliberate. 1, 2, 3. Morrigan stepped back toward the door. You should rest, she said. You'll need your strength. The final chime rang out. 12. Merry Christmas, she added quietly, and closed the door behind her. I sat there in the small room at Beacon Point Sanatorium, the chain heavy on the bed beside me, knowing with a certainty that made my stomach drop that whatever had fled into the dark had not gone far at all. It was waiting. And now, so was I. Hi everyone, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the Christmas Eve special. Christmas has always made me wonder about something. We spend most of our childhood being taught stranger danger. Lock your doors. Don't answer to people you don't know. Safety is rules. And then Christmas Eve rolls around, and suddenly we're like, actually, let a stranger climb down the chimney, leave him food, don't question it, shh, go to sleep. And we tell children it's fine. Magical even. Which makes you wonder, is Christmas about kindness? Or have we been conditioned to ignore every survival instinct we spent decades learning? And if so, why? What's coming? Sleep well tonight. Lock your doors. And if something does knock, make sure it's wearing a bell. Please hit subscribe, like, and maybe join the membership so you can say, I was here before she got weirdly famous. Perks include cool emojis, member badges, early access to videos and more. Oh, and I've lowered the top tier price, right down to its minimum, just in case anyone fancies an upgrade. You get everything from the first tier, plus merch discounts, member-only videos, and also have a story written about you if you stay for 3 months. Which would be a pretty cool thing to tell your friends, right? Yes, it would. Don't lie. Speaking of merch, I have merch now, so check that out. A massive shout out to my members. I can say members now. Mark Mathern 7322 and Ever New. If you're on a mobile or tablet, please consider hyping the video. It pushes it a tiny bit further out into the YouTube wild. If you really, really enjoyed it, I think I have that super thanks button down there somewhere. Even £1 helps me toward my goal of making this a full-time thing. Then I can just have one full-time thing instead of my day job and this full-time. I'm here a lot. Good night.